quickly, I wanted to give my take on the qualifier, or not the qualifiers, the invited teams, the potential invites for the Kiev Major. So, all right, guys. So the Kiev Major just around the corner. As far as the qualifiers, at least, and hell, the actual event, even in a sense, just around the corner. We're entering March right here. The qualifiers, though, coming up next week, supposed to be happening next week. We haven't had information come out for them just yet. What is the format of the teams and everything? But obviously, we just had the Star Ladder wrap up. Team Liquid winning it right there. Now with that event in the books, though, as expected, a lot of people are waiting now for what all this information is going to be. Specifically, who the invite teams are going to be for the Kiev Major. Now, there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter and throughout the Dota 2 community, so I figured I would chime in myself and just give my take on what I feel are the worthy teams that deserve an invite spot for the Kiev Major coming up. Now, I'm going to preface this with, just like everyone else, I have no clue in terms of how many teams are inviting, if they're going to do rules in terms of if they're going to select from very specific regions, at least have a certain amount from each region, or whatever the case is. I'm just simply going off the worthy teams, in my opinion, that deserve to make it to the Kiev Major with an invite, at least, that will not have to go through the qualifiers. Now, we'll start with the Chinese region, because this is going to be the one that's, I personally don't have a crazy amount of analysis on, but two teams that I think are very deserving. One, of course, is Newbie. One is Newbie, a team that has been very dominant in the Chinese scene as of late, looking good with their recent success at both Chinese events but also international events. And in fact, quick glance right here, you see, since really the patch kind of taken place, they got second at the China Top 2016. It was a mini event. They lost to EG in the finals. It was only a 4-team event, so I guess you really can't look at that too much, but still a solid result there. They did finish first in the Dota 2 Professional League, the DPL, of course, right there, and over IG Vitality, and taking home a big chunk of the prize pool there. So obviously a great successful result there. And then of course they got the runner-up against DC in the ESL 1 Genting event. So really those are those two standout results, those most latest ones, both post 7.00. I think a first and a second in very prestigious events in this time frame. There's really no question in my mind. Newbie is going to be one of the teams that advance on to the or are going to be having an invite to the Kiev Major. I think it would be absolutely insane if they do not get an invite. Now, another team from China, which perhaps is going to be a little bit more of a discussion, and maybe not many people agreeing with me to an extent, VGJ. VG Gaming J. Now, this is a team, again, they are a newly formed team. Now, you look at their roster. Obviously, they have a lot of previous experience and previous success, but to be clear, I mean, this isn't a case of, oh, yeah, their roster deserves an invite. Obviously, that's not the case here. As far as reasons why I at least feel like they deserve it over others is because they've actually had some pretty good success on top of being this hyped-up team from the Chinese region. Most noticeably, the event that just happened this last weekend, the Star Ladder event. They finished runner-up, and they even took the first game in the Grand Finals against Liquid, ultimately losing it in the end, of course, 3-1, but finishing runner-up in what I consider to be the best event so far as overall competition goes since patch 7.0 came out, really since the Boston Major, frankly. One that really should have helped determine the most in terms of the invite spots. They finished runner-up. That right there, and on their way to finishing runner-up, they defeated OG 2-1 in the semifinals, and that no doubt has to be another bit of a standout. I consider OG, and I think a lot of people would agree, to be the top team right now. From their Boston Major win to just success that they've had since then as well, they're really the number one team in Dota 2 at this point. Even with the Star Ladder event finishing the way it did, I still think that's a very solid argument. So I think those couple of points right there, and on top of that, they not only qualify for the Star Ladder, of course, it looked good doing it, but they also qualify for the Dota 2 Asian Championships in that first and second place spot, and they looked very good doing it, and this was right after they really were formed, and they right off the bat were clicking and looking very good and having a great success as a result. So VGJ, the second team that I would, again, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that they're the second best team, or I'm just kind of going by regions right now, and the teams that I feel deserve an invite to the Kiev Major. So, but they would be the other team from China that I think is very deserving of getting a Kiev invite spot. So it'll be interesting to see if they do. Obviously, newbie I'm a lot more certain about, but I do think VGJ is also deserving of the spot. Now, speaking of Team Liquid, as we were just talking about right there, and OG for that matter, frankly, both of those teams I think are very deserving. We'll start with Liquid, though. Of course, they just are coming off the Star Ladder result right there. In fact, on their achievements, it's currently not even updated with it. Here we go. It's a better look. But kind of similar to VGJ, they really have the same story as VGJ, right? Where this is they're not a newly formed team, but they have the newer roster. They GH kind of stepping in as a new player for the team. They did win DreamHack going in the Boston Major event. They weren't actually at the Boston Major, of course, but the point is they won, so they even had a little bit of momentum there. Now, I know, again, you're only supposed to really take from what happened since really the Boston Major to now, but taking that a little bit into consideration, I think you could. But even if you don't, they not only qualified for both Star Ladder and the DAC, but again, they looked very dominating duos. In fact, at the DAC qualifiers, double check real quickly, but I think they went almost throughout the whole event without a single loss. Yeah, their only loss was to Bears. I guess they did lose one game to NIP also in the group stages, but they only had 2 game losses throughout their whole run in what many consider to be the toughest region. Obviously China, you'd have to, I think, figure to be up there as well, but Team Liquid. And then to top it all off, the cherry on top, of course, is the most recent, which once again I feel like is the most proving event that you have to take into consideration. The Star Ladder event that just happened this last weekend. They won it all, and they looked good doing so. So no doubt in my mind, they're also going to get an invite. Another team that's absolutely no doubt is, of course, OG. As I stated, I think you could argue that they should be credited still as the #1 team right now in Dota 2. Obviously, the Boston Major, they are your defending champions. And this isn't a case of, oh, they're your defending champions, but they've had a roster change or, they went on a little bit of a slump or whatever. No, that's not even the case. They obviously went to the Dota pit. Now, they lost to EG in the finals there, but, again, they had a great run throughout. They lost it in a 5-game series, an epic 5-game series, 3-2 against EG, but still finishing second overall in that event. Elimination mode, not really something you're going to really look at and be like, oh, look at that, what they did with elimination mode. But, hey, they happen to win that event, and, they look decent doing so. But, again, not that I'm suggesting that should really affect an invite spot. But, and then on top of that, it wasn't their fault necessarily that they didn't really play as much as other teams, perhaps, mainly because, again, they were getting invited to a lot of these events. They didn't have to play through these qualifiers, but I don't think you should count that against them, similar to something like, well, we'll get into a second, but like an EG, as we'll talk about shortly right here. But anyways, the point is, OG, even with, finishing only a 3rd, 4th place spot at the Star Ladder event, again, they lost to a very hot, lately successful team in VGJ, 2-1 in that semifinal match, ultimately knocking them out. But in my mind, again, pretty clear that they are also going to be getting a invite spot. Just alone being the defending champions is really going to push them forward, in my opinion. So, you got, 4 teams right now. Another team that I think is deserving is, as I just mentioned right there, the one, the only Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses, as I pull up their tab, obviously, again, on brand name alone, no, it takes away from the team to say something like that. But they're not just necessarily the brand name. They are a deserving team, finishing 3rd, 4th place at the Boston Major. But as I talked about the China Top 2016, they won that event. Now, again, that was a pretty weak event as far as value goes. It was only a 4-team tournament. It was just after the Boston Major, just after this big patch came out, with people were kind of just not really knowing what was going on. So I don't necessarily use that as huge reason, but it's a result, and they did defeat New to do so. Then they won the Dota Pit League, of course, 3-2. And overall in that event, again, I believe they overall looked really good. We'll kind of recap it right here real quickly. But, yeah, they went all the way to the winners bracket right here, having some good results, even defeating OG in the winners, and then again in the grand finals, 3-2 right there. So, again, they haven't been playing the most events similar to an OG, but it's a mix-up because they've been getting invited. But when they have, it's been pretty damn good. So, again, one of these other cases of really no questions asked. So, now, for my 5 teams, it's been no question. Now, VGJ so far is the only team that I I wouldn't be surprised if they're left out, but I do think that they are deserving and are in my, at least, Kiev invite list. Not that that really matters in the big picture, but, obviously we're having fun right here. One last team, yes, that's right, one last team I do think is deserving. They are kind of on the, they're the teeter-totter for me, but I do think overall they are deserving. It's a mix of they have been playing a fair amount, and they have overall been having decent results. Digital Chaos. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to look to this last weekend at the Star Ladder event and be like, well, they finished 7th, 8th. They did. They finished 7th, 8th. They did not win a single game here in the Star Ladder event this last weekend. I go back to this was the toughest event we've had so far, so that is something to take into consideration when saying that. But it is something that why they're putting them on this teeter-totter, like I said. If they happen to get 5th, 6th, or if they happen to get out of the groups even, I think then it would have been no question. Because they are also coming off that ESL 1 Genting event, which was really considered the first post 7.00 tournament, the legitimate one at least. At least the teams had a little bit of time to prepare for, and obviously they took on Newbie there 3-2 in the grand final. So they are kind of riding that wave of momentum, but they also did qualify for the Star Ladder. The disappointing result was they did not qualify for the DAC, and P did instead of them out of the American region. But there's argument to be made that they should have been an invite team in the first place for DAC. That's another story, though. On top of that, however, it came down to the very wire. It came down to the wire, right? It came down to the very end, but in the end, NP squeaked by and was able to be the victors for the Dota 2 Asian Championship qualifier there as a result. So it is what it is with that result. Not getting that kind of hurts them a bit, definitely. But I still think overall they are a deserving team when it comes to an invite spot. So they would kind of wrap up my 6 teams that I think are worthy. Again, I don't know how many teams they're going to invite or how specifically they're going to do it, as this post in the background's falling down, I noticed. Point is, though, those are my 6 teams that I think have justification for saying, you know what, they deserve that invite. They shouldn't have to go through a gauntlet that's going to be these qualifiers here. Obviously, there's a couple of teams that come to mind that I know other people may have on their list that are like, well, what about this team? Most noticeably, I know Ad Phenom has kind of been a hot team to talk about with the possible invite spots. Hey, I love Ad Phenom just as much as the next guy. I stressed even before the Boston Major, going into the Montreal event that I was able to go out to, and had a lot of fun hanging out with those guys, a lot of fun watching them. Thought that they were definitely a solid team, but their results post-Boston Major have frankly been disappointing for a team that got second place, for a team that got runner-up at the Boston Major. They have not been having really many, if any, good results. I mean, you look at the couple that are right here. Of course, the qualifying events, both for the Star Ladder as well as the Dota 2 Asian Championships. And it's not only the fact that they didn't qualify for those events, it's that it's how it happened. I mean, yeah, 4th place in a qualifier. It's like it's a tough region. We understand this. But we're talking about teams that deserve an invite to the major event that's coming up, not teams that, okay, are decent from that region. There should only be so many spots, and it should be very, very deserving by said team. So you finish 4th there, you get 7th, 8th in the Dota 2 Asian European qualifiers, another case of just not looking too good. Elimination mode, again, I can't really look at that and be like, oh, that's more proof that they don't. But it's something that's there. We're all human. That is something that we will take into consideration, whether we think it should or not. But even without that result, again, they're post-Boston Major. I just don't feel like this is a worthy team, especially when you look at, I think more so than a lot of majors in the past, there's been patch changes that have come up post-majors, but this is arguably one of the biggest ones that has happened with 7.0. It's a different game in a lot of ways. So I think that really matters in terms of the results post-Boston Major, post the most recent major. So, yeah, as much as I would love to see them there, and hopefully they can get through the qualifiers to get there, I do not think they deserve an invite spot at all when it comes to being a very, very select invite list. So other than that, again, I understand people have their opinions on some other teams perhaps, but really no other teams stand out to me that are too deserving. I think TNC Pro Team people are maybe going to bring up in Southeast Asia, but I mean, I guess they did finish 3rd, 4th in the Star Ladder, which is pretty solid. They did win the WESG, but as we've talked about before too, is WESG really an event that you're going to give a lot of value to? I think it deserves very little value in terms of their win there, but it's nothing. You can't say that as like, oh, they won a big event, let's go ahead and throw them an invite spot. So I don't think that they are deserving in the end, but they're a team that I think that's good to have discussion at least. They're a team where if Valve made a point, we want to bring a team from each region, specifically Southeast Asia, they would be the team to invite. I think you invite them over Faceless when it comes to the success that they've had as of late. So other than that, I think it's pretty clear that no other team, in my mind at least, is really even remotely deserving of an invite spot. So whether or not you guys agree, I mean, obviously I expect people to disagree. That's kind of the point of this, but hopefully you at least enjoyed my opinions and thoughts there on my personal invite list for the Kiev Major coming up. So thanks for watching, guys. Until next time. All right. There we go.